The desire for an easy life sounds innocent, almost wise, until you notice what it quietly takes from you. Comfort can protect the body, but too much of it weakens the spirit. We are taught to believe that the good life is the one with the least friction, the fewest demands, the fastest relief from pain. Yet the life arranged to avoid difficulty often becomes the life most easily ruled by fear. And that is the paradox at the center of so much modern unhappiness. In trying to escape struggle, many people become fragile before ordinary reality. In the next few minutes, you will see why the pursuit of ease can become a hidden form of self-imprisonment, and how a different relationship with pain, effort, and uncertainty can return something far more valuable than comfort: inner steadiness. There is a quiet cost to always choosing what is easier. It does not always appear as failure. More often, it appears as restlessness, dependence, and a strange inability to meet life as it is. A person may have convenience, options, entertainment, and still feel deeply unprepared for disappointment, criticism, boredom, loss, or silence. The Stoics understood something we are still reluctant to accept. The obstacle is not merely in the way. Often, it reveals the way. Not because suffering is noble in itself, and not because hardship should be romanticized, but because a human being becomes trustworthy to himself by learning what he can endure. The easy path often removes the very conditions in which character is formed. Think of how quickly we now seek relief. At the first sign of discomfort, we reach for distraction. At the first sign of uncertainty, we search for reassurance. At the first sign of failure, we are tempted to call the effort meaningless. But a life built on immediate escape produces a dangerous illusion. That peace comes from controlling circumstances. In practice, it usually produces the opposite. The more your peace depends on life being soft, predictable, and agreeable, the more anxious you become when life behaves like life. And life will behave like life. It will delay, disappoint, refuse, wound, confuse, and change without asking permission. So the real question is not how to remove difficulty from your days. The real question is whether you are becoming the kind of person who can remain inwardly ordered when difficulty arrives. This is where philosophy stops being abstract. It becomes a way of standing in the world. A person who avoids all strain often mistakes comfort for freedom. But comfort can become a cage with velvet walls. Freedom is not the ability to feel good at all times. Freedom is the ability not to collapse when you do not. Consider a simple modern example. Someone spends years arranging life around convenience. Only familiar tasks, only safe ambitions, only environments where they are liked, only relationships that never challenge them. On the surface, this seems sensible. Why invite pain? But then one job is lost, one relationship ends, one illness interrupts the plan, and suddenly the person feels not merely sad, but shattered. The event is painful, yes, but the deeper injury comes from never having built an inner life capable of bearing disruption. Ease did not protect them. It only delayed the moment of reckoning. This is one of the hardest truths to accept. If you never train your mind to meet resistance, resistance will always feel like injustice. You will interpret ordinary hardship as a sign that something has gone wrong, rather than a sign that you are alive. The Stoic view is more demanding, but also more merciful. It says that pain is not always the enemy. Sometimes pain is information. Sometimes frustration reveals attachment. Sometimes fear reveals where you have surrendered your power. Sometimes failure reveals that your identity was built on applause rather than substance. And yet, there is another reversal here. The aim is not to become cold, severe, or numb. Many people hear ideas about discipline and imagine a life drained of tenderness. But true strength does not harden the heart, it steadies it. The disciplined person is not the one who feels nothing. He is the one who can feel deeply without becoming governed by every emotion. She is the one who can experience fear without obeying it, disappointment without becoming bitter, uncertainty without rushing into panic. Inner peace is not purchased by avoiding disturbance. It is built by learning not to be possessed by it. If this reflection speaks to something you have quietly felt, subscribe to the channel and leave a thoughtful comment about the difficulty that has shaped you most. Sometimes the most honest conversations begin where comfort ends. The hidden cost of wanting an easy life is not only weakness, it is also meaninglessness. Human beings do not flourish merely by being protected from pressure. They flourish by engaging reality with courage, intelligence, and consent. There is a deep satisfaction in doing what is necessary even when it is unpleasant, in telling the truth when it costs you something, in remaining patient when no one rewards your patience, in continuing a worthy effort when results are slow. These experiences are not glamorous, but they create a private dignity that cannot be given by status, possessions, or praise. A smooth life may look attractive from a distance, but a meaningful life is usually textured by effort. This is why so many people feel empty in conditions that seem comfortable. They have reduced life to preference management. They ask, almost without noticing, how can I make each day less demanding, less uncertain, less painful? But the better question is more difficult and more liberating. What is worth demanding something from me? That question changes everything. It shifts attention away from mood and toward purpose, away from appetite and toward responsibility, away from ease and toward alignment. The moment you ask not what feels best, but what is worth doing, you begin to recover your center. Look again at anxiety, one of the defining experiences of modern life. We often imagine anxiety comes only from having too many burdens. Sometimes that is true. But often anxiety grows from the opposite condition, from having a mind untrained in bearing the normal instability of existence. A person who has never practiced voluntary difficulty becomes intimidated by involuntary difficulty. A person who never chooses silence cannot bear an unoccupied mind. A person who never accepts small discomforts becomes overwhelmed by unavoidable pain. This is why ancient philosophy still feels startlingly relevant. It reminds us that resilience is not improvised in crisis. It is built in advance, quietly, by the way one lives each ordinary day. You see this in very practical ways. The person who can sit with boredom is less likely to become enslaved by distraction. The person who can tolerate being misunderstood is less likely to betray his convictions for approval. The person who can accept gradual progress is less likely to abandon meaningful work for quick pleasure. The person who can endure the pain of discipline is spared the heavier pain of regret. This is not punishment, it is structure. Every life contains pain. The only real choice is between the pain that shapes you and the pain that empties you. Another reversal follows. What you call a hard life may be the beginning of a free one. Waking early to do the work you have postponed, having the difficult conversation you fear, refusing the impulse that weakens you, staying with grief long enough to learn from it, accepting that some things are beyond your control and must still be faced with dignity. These do not make life smaller. They make the self larger. They increase your range. They expand what you can survive without self-betrayal. And in that expansion, something profound appears, a quieter form of confidence. Not the loud confidence of image, but the calm confidence of someone who no longer needs life to be gentle in order to remain whole. This is where the Stoic distinction between control and uncontrollability becomes a living practice rather than a famous phrase. You cannot command outcomes, but you can refine your response. You cannot prevent loss, but you can refuse to let loss turn into collapse. You cannot stop others from being unfair, foolish, or cruel, but you can refuse to make their disorder your inner law. An easy life seeks to master circumstances. A wise life seeks to master the self within circumstances. One is always unstable, the other deepens with time. And perhaps the deepest cost of wanting an easy life is that it trains you to negotiate with reality instead of meeting it. You begin to ask life to remove all sharp edges before you offer your full presence. But reality never signs that contract. It asks for maturity instead. It asks whether you can love without certainty, work without immediate reward, continue without applause, and remain decent when bitterness would be easier. In this sense, the soul is not strengthened by comfort alone, but by honest contact with the limits of existence. Mortality, failure, effort, rejection, patience, responsibility, these are not interruptions of life. They are part of the material from which a real life is made. So do not ask only for a lighter burden. Ask for stronger shoulders, a clearer mind, a less frightened heart. Do not measure your life by how little it hurts, but by how truthfully it is lived. There are burdens that degrade a person, yes, and there are pains that should be relieved where possible. Wisdom does not glorify unnecessary suffering, but neither does it confuse softness with peace. Peace is earned in a harsher and more beautiful way. It comes when you stop expecting the world to protect you from being human. In the end, the easy life is often expensive in the ways that matter most. It can cost courage, depth, gratitude, endurance, and self-respect. It can leave a person entertained but unformed, protected but unprepared, soothed but inwardly unstable. A difficult life, consciously met, may wound you at times, but it can also introduce you to your own strength. And that discovery is worth more than comfort, because once you know that you can stand in truth, bear uncertainty, and remain inwardly unbroken, life no longer needs to become easier for you to become freer. The question then is not whether life will be hard. The question is what kind of hardness will shape you. Because the moment you stop asking for a path without resistance, you may finally begin to walk one that leads somewhere real.